stop scrolling, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of geopolitical shock that rewrites alliances, redrafts maps, and puts millions of people at risk. And it all started with one phone call. No missiles, no sanctions, no diplomatic warning, just a single call. And suddenly Britain no longer has access to its most important ally in the Middle East. Israel didn't negotiate. Israel didn't complain. Israel banned the entire British government from entering the country. Every minister, every official, every representative, all of them blocked. And if you think this is just another diplomatic tantrum between two governments, you're missing the real story. What's happening right now affects your safety, your economy, and Britain's global standing in ways the public hasn't even begun to understand. Because this wasn't a slow diplomatic breakdown. It was an explosion. It started 4 days ago when Prime Minister Keir Starmer made two decisions that detonated a 75-year strategic partnership. Decision 1. Support the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants against Israeli officials. Decision 2. Announce a total arms embargo on Israel. Not just offensive weapons, everything, including the defensive systems that intercept rockets before they hit homes, schools, and civilian neighborhoods. But here's the part that shocked the world. Starmer didn't tell his own team. Dame Barbara Woodward, Britain's ambassador to the United Nations, didn't learn about the policy shift from London. She learned about it from an Israeli diplomatic protest. Israel informed her before her own government did. She wrote her resignation letter that same night. And while the world was still processing the shock, the crisis escalated again. British intelligence agencies had no warning. The Foreign Office had no warning. And David Lammy, Britain's own foreign secretary, was about to walk into the most humiliating moment of modern British diplomacy. He was already mid-flight to Tel Aviv for scheduled meetings when Israeli air traffic control delivered a message no G7 foreign minister has ever received. Landing clearance revoked. The pilot turned the plane around over the Mediterranean. Flight tracking apps captured the whole thing live. Diplomats across the world watched as the Foreign Secretary of Britain, one of the world's oldest global powers, was treated like an overbooked passenger. Unprecedented, they called it. Humiliating. A message broadcast loud enough for every capital to hear. And hours later, Netanyahu appeared on camera, surrounded by his full security cabinet, and issued a message that officially burned the bridge. A nation that abandons its allies in their hour of need should not expect friendship in return. The fallout began instantly. Stop whatever you're doing and listen, because this is the moment. Everything snapped. Not behind closed doors, not through rumors, but live in front of the world. In a way no G7 nation has ever been treated before. This wasn't diplomacy. This was a political execution. Hours after Starmer's decisions blew up decades of alliance, the full weight of the fallout hit the man at the center of Britain's foreign policy, Foreign Secretary David Lammy, and it hit him. 30,000 feet in the air, Lammy boarded his official flight to Tel Aviv thinking he would calm tensions, maybe negotiate a diplomatic reset, maybe plead Britain's case. Instead, he became the symbol of Britain's collapse on the world stage. Mid-flight over the Mediterranean, Israeli air traffic control issued an instruction no British Foreign Secretary has ever heard in the history of modern diplomacy. Landing clearance revoked. Turn back immediately. Let that sink in. A G7 foreign minister treated like an overbooked passenger on a budget airline. No explanation, no negotiation, no conversation. Just access denied. Flight tracking apps lit up. Diplomats watched in real time as the aircraft looped back toward Europe, forced to retreat like a country that had just lost its privileges. This wasn't a snub. It was a warning shot fired directly at Downing Street. And only minutes later, the reason became clear. At 9:00 p.m. Jerusalem time, Benjamin Netanyahu appeared on camera with his entire security cabinet behind him. Silent, rigid, deliberate. The message was only 3 sentences long, but it detonated the foundations of the Britain-Israel relationship. A nation that abandons its allies in their hour of need should not expect friendship in return. In 6 hours, Israel suspended every major intelligence sharing framework with Britain. Not slowed, not reviewed, not renegotiated. Suspended outright. Gone overnight. The consequences? Immediate, severe, unprecedented. For the British public, this isn't an abstract diplomatic scuffle. Israeli intelligence has quietly stopped 17 planned terror attacks on British soil over the last 3 years. That protection evaporated the second those systems went dark. Israel's cyber monitoring of Britain's energy grid Water infrastructure, banking networks, switched off. Senior Mossad officials now label British officials as security risks. Let that phrase echo for a moment. This isn't a temporary disagreement. It's a structural collapse, a fracture experts are calling permanent and irreversible. And if you think that's the worst of it, wait until you hear what came next, because this crisis didn't peak here. What happened next didn't just break alliances. It rewrote the global balance of power. Because once Britain's fallout with Israel went public, the shockwaves didn't stop at their borders. They ricocheted across the Middle East, Europe, and the intelligence networks that quietly hold the modern world together. And part 3 is where the world starts asking a terrifying question. If Britain can lose Israel, who's next? The fracture spread faster than anyone in Whitehall expected. In diplomatic backchannels across Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, ministers whispered a question that chilled British diplomats to the bone. If London abandoned Israel under pressure, do our alliances even mean anything anymore? Saudi Arabia, normally cautious, measured, signaled sympathy toward Israel's position. The UAE followed. In private Gulf Cooperation Council sessions, the tone shifted from curiosity to concern. Jordan, stunned by Britain's sudden shift, began re-evaluating years of trust built, painstakingly through defense, coordination and crisis mediation. For the first time in decades, Britain found itself distrusted by both sides of the Middle East divide. Arab governments questioned its consistency, Israel questioned its loyalty, and globally, allies saw chaos where stability once stood. Financial markets reacted like accelerants thrown onto an open flame. The pound slipped against the shekel. Trade agreements worth tens of billions wobbled. British tech firms began disappearing from Israeli innovation programs overnight. On social platforms, a viral hashtag surged. Britain betrays allies. The narrative was spiraling, and London was losing control of it. Meanwhile, on the streets of Britain, a far more personal fear emerged. Jewish communities across major cities asked a chilling, simple question, without Israeli intelligence watching our backs. Who protects us now? Inside 10 Downing Street, panic replaced policy. Cabinet meetings turned into damage control triage sessions. Defense Secretary John Healey reportedly called the chain of decisions strategically suicidal. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper warned that Britain had made itself a target without the shield. But the moment everything shifted was the leak. The one Whitehall feared most. My 5 threat assessments revealed that Iranian-backed proxy groups were already probing the gaps created by the sudden intelligence freeze. Planned operations, previously monitored through joint networks, were now recalibrated to exploit Britain's new blind spots. That report sent shockwaves through Parliament. For the first time, MPs realized this wasn't moral posturing, or diplomatic signaling, or ideological grandstanding. This was risk, cold, immediate, and deadly. And outside the chaos, watching the fallout from the sidelines, former Prime Minister Rishi Malik sensed his opportunity. He positioned himself as the restoration candidate, arguing Britain must realign with democracies or face strategic